Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Obviously, a lot of the conversation in the breakouts, especially around AI, was around the securing the data, right? But before we get into the actual questions, just let's take 2 minutes to talk a little bit about who you are, your space in security, and a little bit about your organization. So, Chris, you want to start us out?
Sure. So at Lumen, security informs all of our products. So, we're traditionally known as a networking company, but with using the amount of data that we ingest, being the world's largest backbone, gives us insight to inform products such as our network as a service product, DDoS mitigation, web application firewall, and various professional security services. So that's kind of where we're at in the space right now.
Perfect. Rosana?
So Cybersafe, we are a full-service managed security service provider. Essentially, the way to think about us is we have a security offering really no matter where a client might sit in their security journey. So we do everything from folks that haven't gotten started yet, maybe they want to start with an assessment to understand their risk, all the way to supporting those that are ways into their security infrastructure, programs and things like that, right? Maybe we'll align a pen test or things like that. Our bread and butter, however, is continuous security. So your managed detection and response, your extended detection and response, pick an acronym, pick 3 letters, or you would assign to security. We do that. So the thing to know about us, we support global clients. We're very much industry agnostic. And our biggest differentiator, I would say, is we've gone to market with a proprietary SOAR. So it's security orchestration, automation, and response. That allows us to use best-of-breed commercial platforms and supplement them quite a bit to align with each of your unique level of business risk.
Ryan, the man with the shirt. I'm sure everyone wants to know who you are.
I was the same one.
You would have worn it better. I'm just saying. I have to try real hard to look this nice. I'm the CEO of a company called SimpliMeta. We work to install and implement a lot of products, everything down to field techs and field services, all the way up through CISOs and compliance officers that you might need to get things done. So we're a full service implementation and project management team. We do a lot with working with breach remediation and helping you recover from that, helping you prep for your compliance audits. We also do have some other security products that play into that as well.
All right, and last but not least, Chaz.
I'm a Scorpio. I like long walks on the beach. Wrong panel, sorry, that's this weekend. Dataprise, we call ourselves a cyber-led managed services provider. So think an MSSP, managed security services provider, and MSP, managed services provider. So outsourcing, help desk, NOC, SOC, professional services, project management, mobile device management, managed mobility. We try and be that complete outsourced IT department for your organizations or to complement your existing IT team. We're a managed Microsoft partner, so that's a technical term. That doesn't mean we're tight with Microsoft. That means we have enough volume of business with Microsoft and the competency certifications that we have that term and have a dedicated team for Microsoft. So much of our solutions, including cybersecurity, are built off of the Microsoft ecosystem. So I'll stop talking now.
Perfect. So, Chris, obviously we're hearing about breaches almost every day, right? We just found out that all of our social security numbers are out there via a friendly breach with the National Public Database, Snowflake, the list goes on and on. What are you telling your customers, the 3 most important things, for a commercial organization, let's say mid-market commercial organization, that they need to be concerned with today?
Yeah, and so let me talk about MPD real quick first. Even though not a business, there is a business impact that you can extrapolate from it, but the big thing with NPD is for individuals. Do yourselves a favor, implement a credit freeze, talk to your friends and family and let them know to do the same. There's no 2 ways about it. This breach has all of your data, unless you use the data opt-out service, such as Delete Me is one that I'm familiar with. But when it comes to businesses, take Snowflake, for example. If you would have had multi-factor authentication enabled, that wouldn't have happened to them because they only targeted Snowflake customers that did not have MFA. So what does that kind of tell you? Well, they had to have, or probably had some inside knowledge. So enable MFA, no 2 ways about it. Second, know where your data is. Data security posture management is hugely important. If you don't have awareness of where your crown jewels are, that you are playing, you're flirting with disaster. Enable versioning, and finally, there's quite a few things, but have backups, and remember this, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. What does that mean? If I have a backup in a cloud provider, that is all I have. So if that gets compromised, I'm dead in the water. Test your backups. We are almost to a point now where you hear about a breach every day. Your data is out there as an individual. As a company, as a going concern, being able to know what to do in the event that, not when it happens, not if it happens, but when it happens, is hugely important. Have an incident response plan. Know what you're going to do when it happens and who's going to do it, who's going to be responsible. Those things can help you it doesn't help you avoid it, but it helps you be able to continue doing business, because if you lose your data, ransomware, breaches, if you lose it, there's a very, very good chance that you are no longer going to be a going concern, and you're open to all kinds of lawsuits and other things that just are not very pretty.
Yeah, I like that 2 is 1, 1 is none. I really liked what you said there. Chaz, I mean, you guys are an MSP for larger organizations that work across multiple states. Anything different you're telling the companies that in your portfolio?
Not terribly different. I mean, a business resiliency strategy, which includes disaster recovery, right, is first off crucial. It's not if, but when your company is going to have some sort of incident, so you have to be able to recover from it. Remember that a proactive cybersecurity strategy does not prevent you from getting attacked, right? If someone wants to get into your environment, they're going to get into your environment some way or another. What it does is minimize the impact of that event. So when that event occurs, you still have to recover from it. So a business resiliency strategy is definitely one that we're talking about with, especially the COOs, the CEOs, those that want to make sure that uptime is of the highest priority. When we're talking with CFOs or maybe CIOs, IT admins, we're finding our conversation drive towards consolidation. There's so much technology that's out there that their IT teams are getting overwhelmed with the amount of certifications they have to get, with the amount of tools they have to know how to support, right? So as a managed Microsoft partner, we're looking a lot at that consolidation within the Microsoft stack. So most of you are probably in some form of 365, right? So Steve from AppDirect mentioned Sentinel, right? We're utilizing Sentinel as the SIM, and we build that out in your own 365 tenant. We're using Defender for the endpoint protection, right? So that we're making sure that all of your end user compute devices and your servers are protected. So we're seeing that consolidation within the Microsoft ecosystem. Microsoft also can provide MFA, can provide the edge security, right? So that consolidation conversation is one of the things we're having most frequently with our partners.
Yeah, it makes sense. Roxana, I mean, you guys are a managed security provider. What are you guys tracking that isn't in the mainstream that we haven't heard about today or advising your customers on?
So I think a couple things. I want to go back to just the answer that Chris gave before. I think we have to get on the same page, right? So Cybersafe, we do a lot of incident response. They're not for our current clients, right? We meet people after the fact, right? Usually once something bad has happened to them. And in every situation, what maybe wasn't always known is where is the line between our personal lives and our corporate lives, our personal accounts, our corporate accounts, and then where's the line between prevention and detection? Those things today are very tough for businesses to understand, but we have to start the conversation in situations like this rather than after something bad's happened. Mm-hmm. So the steps that we want to take is let's prevent as much as possible, right? Strong passwords, implementing MFA, data classification for those of you that are regulated, right? Let's not be giving access to everything to everyone, right? Simple principles, least privilege. But we also want to do things like network segmentation and make sure that we're properly addressing, patch management and vulnerability scanning, right? Those are all best practices. But we also want to end up in the position of where do we understand or how do we know when those things fail us, right? We cannot prevent it all. We can prevent a lot, right? But we can't prevent just everything. MFA, fantastic step, but guess what? MFA can be bypassed. So there's a number of different things, and this isn't a knock to Microsoft's MFA or a knock to Duo, right? Each of those things are relevant and they stop a number of things. But when we look at the next level of sophistication, how do we understand when that's occurring? And that's really when we bring it down to detection. So detection is extremely important for businesses to be able to understand, we call them indicators of compromise, right? Things or behaviors that look like they're signs of a threat actor trying to do something bad in your business, in your environment, we call it. How we get that information is partially through your EDRs, right? So you mentioned Defender, Cybersafe works with Defender, SentinelOne, CrowdStrike. Those things are great products, but products alone do not allow us to understand nuances. Products don't know the difference between me and Ryan. We can configure them, we can tune them, we can do a bunch of different things, but we still need that human element. So I want to bring us to the AI piece too. So leveraging that's really important, but having those safeguards to understand when someone's trying to bypass them, I'd say is mission critical. So my last point, sorry for my long monologue, the things that our SOC is seeing. 3 big things today. Compromised email accounts is probably the number one thing. Yeah. We actually had to go to market with a Microsoft 365 monitoring service standalone, right? That only brought visibility into the email because that's the amount of cases that our security team was seeing. Another thing that's pretty significant is VPN accounts becoming compromised. This is usually configuration issues, so that's definitely something if you want to chat more about it, I think we should. Then the last piece is social engineering. It's not going away. Last week we had a very significant social engineering campaign that could bypass MFA. It hit 8 of our current accounts at the same, I should say clients, at the same time. No damage was done there. There was no business impact because we saw it, we detected it. We work with those clients on what to block. So going forward, again, preventative measure. But these sophisticated things are happening now. So I do encourage everyone, aside for those best practices, now is the time to start thinking of those detection capabilities that you can put into play.
So what I'm hearing is proactive, right? Being proactive.
Absolutely.
So in our experience, and I hear this from a lot of different clients who are working with them, is yes, it's easy to find budget once an incident has occurred, right? But how easy is it to find budget to be proactive, right? So Ryan, do you want to take that? And I mean, I know you guys work in that area, but then you also can, maybe touch on, vulnerability assessments and where those make sense as well. But how do we find budget to be proactive?
Well, I mean, I think, so just to kind of highlight all of this and put all this picture together, everything you just heard from all these guys, right? They've talked about detection, they've talked about prevention, they've talked about blocking it, they've talked about best practices. That's a lot. I'm sure every one of y'all now know exactly what you're going to go tell your executive leadership team, right? And exactly how you're going to get approved. And you're going to say, well, Rosana said so. And that's great, and that's exactly what I tell my employees. Rosana said so we better do that. But how do you start to plan that? How do you get to do it so that you don't have to call us one day to do breach remediation? Because I can promise you, you don't want to have to call me to do breach remediation. It's all encompassing. I've had CIOs cry because they know they're going to get fired, right? I've had them know they're going to have to let go of employees. I've had them know that they're going to lose clients, right? And all the time they're racking up money, they're losing revenue. You do not want to find yourself in that position. So you want to take all those best practices steps that she talked about. You don't want to be the one in the news like what he talked about, right? So how do you start to do that? Well, for me, one of the first things that I look at anytime someone calls us for any really product is you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you are. I mean, you cannot start to make a plan. You cannot go to leadership. You cannot look at your employees and say, we're going to go in this direction if you don't even know where you are and you can't prioritize all these different things that are coming at you, right? And so how do you start to do that? Well, you have to start to create some sort of visualization. And just kind of speaking broadly, not even security for a second, just you have to have visualization. You have to have the data points for the decisions you want to make so that you can start to prioritize what you're going to do and how you're going to go about it. Right, so kind of leading into specifically what John was asking about assessments. What do we think about vulnerability assessments, right? And where do those play into a business? Well, it's extremely important, right? Because nothing's going to really come up in your SIEM, nothing's going to come up in your EDR until it's already happened, right? And you have all those best practices to do, but you only have so much time in a day. So how do you start to determine where you put your attention? And a lot of that's going to come through doing exercises like doing penetration testing, right? Or doing vulnerability assessments. And that's something I think everyone up here can assist with and help with. So a vulnerability assessment, if you're not familiar with kind of what the overarching concept of vulnerability assessment is it takes a look at your organization as it is today and tells you where they know there to be risk. So you run that across all of your computers and it's going to come back. And everyone here familiar with NIST? Has everyone, we pretty much know about NIST and what that is? Okay. So, NIST logs every vulnerability known with every software, every vendor in the world, right? From simple things like, your Adobe PDF readers, all the way up to your Windows operating systems, your Apple cell phone, whatever it might, or Apple camera. I'm sorry, Brandon. It's a camera. We made that very clear earlier. Even your Apple camera, it's going to tell you that, hey, there's a vulnerability, and it's going to score and it's going to rank all those vulnerabilities. So when we scan across those computers, we can come back and look at your leadership team. We just did one. Literally, I looked at the report before I left my room today. They have 330 computers, so they're not itty bitty. We found over 1,000 NIST vulnerabilities that were actually ranked and scored vulnerabilities across those 300 computers. 1,000 potential risks sitting in that business right then and there, right? And they don't know that. They have EDR. I don't know which one they're using. It doesn't really matter. But they have something on there. They have a SIEM system, but no one's told them. These are all the things that someone's going to try to take a vulnerability of, and you better hope that S1 instance, that Microsoft Defender instance, that CrowdStrike instance catches that specific thing. So I really encourage, if you're looking at starting any level of a journey in any sort of a product in your business, that you need to start by trying to understand, where are we today? So there's vulnerability scans and encompasses things like dark web monitoring, which doesn't do a lot, but to know that you're out there, to know that you're in a database. We were working with someone the other day, and they found out that pretty much all of their employees use their business email to register for personal stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing stops them. Right? So we did a dark web scan, and like 95% of their employees are registered somewhere with their corporate email address on public things, and creating those vulnerabilities. Well, they didn't know they had that threat. Again, is that threat in and of it the one that's going to create the next national public database? Probably not, but it is something to be aware of. So I would encourage everyone in here to be looking at how you could do some sort of vulnerability assessment to pull that data in, and then just start to take all those best practices she was talking about, and now you know how to start to prioritize where those should be and how do you get to them all, because you're not going to get to them all tomorrow. Just because she said it, Rosana said so, right? Only gets you to the fact that you now need to put it into a schedule and get it done. It does not make it get resolved. And so I would suggest you should do those at least once a year for more small mid-market. If you deal with a lot of high compliance data, you got a lot of PII, PHI organizations. Some of our hospitals that we work with are doing pen test quarterly, and they have vulnerability scanning that just runs continuous scanning, right, on all the systems, so that we can see the ever-changing landscape on a day-by-day, hour-by-hour basis. So, but small organizations, at least once a year, you want someone to come in and tell you, how do I stand, how do I look in my business today, all the way down to scanning what data sensitivity that you might have out on the public web. That's all part of the picture.
Speaking for all of our SMBs out here who are saying, okay, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Right? How much does that cost? I mean, are we talking about thousands and tens of thousands of dollars to do a basic vulnerability scan? Or are we talking about hundreds or a few $1,000s?
Kind of depends on the depth you want to go. So there's a couple tiers, right? So if you were to call out and say, hey, I want to have a CISO come in and evaluate, part of the assessments to go into your policies, your procedures, your backup strategies, right? Your resiliency strategies, your vendors, your No, that's going to be expensive. You're going to look anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 for probably something like that. Might be out of reach for some of those. But more simple things like coming in and doing a full vulnerability scan, pulling those reports, pulling that data, organizing that for you, and giving you that landscape picture of where you stand from your technology footprint, right? And which security vectors that might be open in your landscape, and have that. No, that's going to be measured in a couple $1,000s type of an assessment. That's going to be much more achievable when you go into it.
And you also have to look at the cost of not doing that,
Yeah, that's a good point.
right?
I think
What does a breach cost?
Yeah, that's a good comment on, budget. People ask us all the time, what should I be spending? The worst quote in the world is, I don't even know what it is, like spend X% of your budget on security.
That's right.
Throw that out the window.
Yes.
I don't believe in that. Sorry if that's a hot take, but just throwing a ton of money at the problem doesn't help anybody. So smart money spent in a business context. You want to grow your business for the year. You want to invest in a new office, new product, go to market with something new. Your goal for that year is to make more money. A cyber event or attack can significantly impact that. So we want to weigh out cost versus risk versus reward. So essentially, okay, if I have, all of you could go to your business leadership and say, all right, how long or how much of a cyber event would we be willing to handle? And they'd say none. We don't want to get hacked. We don't want to pay ransom. We don't want to deal with any of this. So fitting things into your security program, don't assign a dollar amount to it. Assign something more significant like outcomes. So you can do so much stuff for free, right? We can turn on additional configurations. We can look at Microsoft, right? They're the most sneaky company in the world because there's so many things within those consoles that most of us don't even know are there that can actually really impact us.
That's correct.
So let's do best practices that don't cost us any money first, and then we should look at investment.
Well, and on the growth front, if I may,
Yeah.
how many of you are compliant have to be compliant to some degree, right? Yes? How many of you are down the supply chain of your customers who have to be compliant, right? You need to have those certifications, those pen test, vulnerability assessment reports showing that you are compliant and you're not a risk to your partners, to your customers, right? So having that is a proactive growth strategy because you can now put that on your website. Your SOC 2 Type 2, your ISO 9001, you've gone through these pen tests, vulnerability assess, right? Your NIST 800-171 compliant, CMMC 123, whatever goalpost it will be when it's finalized.
It's never changing.
Correct.
Well, and I think, it's incumbent upon customers to require that of the vendors too, right? I mean, that's just a good step. All right. Everybody had a lot of excitement around AI earlier, so let's turn the conversation to AI and security and what the impact of the advances in AI within the security landscape will be over the next 12 to 24 months. And Chris, you're our CISSP up here, so tell me what you think.
Yeah, so with AI, you need to look at securing your data and then security of the model. So if I go to implement Copilot and I train it on my data, I need to be able to look at that data that it's being trained on because I want it stripped of PII, say. Well, how do I know that it actually did that and what is being showed to my employees is clean data? The predictive AI, which is what we're used to using, is trained by the person that is going to use the model. Think image recognition. Generative AI is trained by someone for everyone to use. So I can throw a prompt at it, and I really have no way of trusting that what is returned to me is accurate unless I've done data cleaning, data sanitization, and making sure that what I'm using is what I want the model to be able to look at. Because without that, you're playing with fire. It's great for telemetry, using machine learning and predictive AI to be able to, feed that into my SIM and get an output, and here's the report. What you want to be, and what the industry is looking at and trying to get to is using generative AI. Generative AI is great at role playing. So I'm a SOC analyst, and I've got all this data, and I think Scattered Spider is in my customer's network, and I've seen these indicators of compromise, these tactics, techniques, and procedures. I need you, so you want to be able to say to the AI, write me a Yara rule that will give me the indicators of compromise and the probability that Scattered Spider, whatever threat actor, is in this customer's network or is actively targeting them. That, in my opinion, is we're not there. That's what we want to get to, but you're just not there. So for right now, data classification, as you mentioned, hugely important. Who is the data owner? Who's the data custodian? All those things that go into classification of the data that you're going to train the model on is hugely important because it impacts whether it's your SOC analyst, whether it's a business impact analysis that you want to do. You mentioned vulnerability assessments. What we see a lot is when a customer comes and says, hey, I need a vulnerability assessment and I need a penetration test so I can check the box and be compliant. And what happens a lot of the times is that vulnerability assessment sits on the desk for the next year and they haven't done anything. Yeah. And when they go through it again, they're not compliant and they lose business. So what we do a lot of is vulnerability management. Because if I'm in the healthcare vertical, I'm not really concerned about threat actors that are targeting the financial vertical and they're specifically going after these vulnerabilities. So when you have that and feed all that into your awareness, then you've got a pretty good chance, or a much better chance, of them continuing to do business.
Yeah, Rosana, can you build on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think there's twofold, right? So the products or platforms that our users are going to put all of their information in. So and so needed a presentation made for their meeting tomorrow, and they forgot to do it, so they just went and asked AI. You say, what did you input into the platform? All of it, right? Well, don't do that, right? We shouldn't be putting regulated data. We shouldn't be putting company trade secrets into these places. We need to set, as businesses, standards for acceptable use, because we don't really know the underlying repositories behind a lot of these, right? Some route back to the places that we would expect, like Copilot and things like that. But Copilot alone, and Kevin, I don't know if you came up with this term or if someone else did, Copilot should be just that. Co-pilot, there still needs to be a driver. We have to be the drivers in this situation. So that, we'll leave it on its own for a minute, but thinking about AI when it comes to our day-to-day in security, first of all, AI is not new, right? We're just in this AI revolution right now. Machine learning's been around for quite some time. A security team like ours uses AI to assist us with automated tasks that otherwise would take quite a bit of time, money, and resources for human beings to address. In every situation, there has to be validation and verification of what it is that we're seeing. So how a security team like ours uses AI is we look at SentinelOne, we look at CrowdStrike, we look at Microsoft Defender, and we say, okay, these platforms have billions of dollars behind them. They know to tell us all of these different things, right? But what if they don't know the differences? Again, if you're an international business, if you're not an international business, a detection in those places might be mission critical in different levels of response. So how a team like ours may use AI is to say, hey, how do I get to this information quicker for faster containment, for better triage, for better decision-making power? So where you can expect an AI to come into play is our SOAR uses this concept called instincts. Instincts are basically like an if-then statement. If you see this, then you see that, here's how we're going to respond to it in that situation. So we leverage this for a number of different reasons. Transparently, it's because it helps us. Yes, it was very expensive for us to create, but it helps us keep our costs down. It helps us keep less individuals assigned to the day-to-day. How that benefits you guys is custom escalation procedures, unique watch lists, being able to query environments for things that matter to you. Who here uses PowerShell every day? Who even knows what PowerShell is? Who doesn't know what PowerShell activity is? Come on, just raise your hand if you don't know. It's not. Okay, cool, right? So if I just asked you all the same question, a detection of PowerShell on my system versus his system versus your system, we have to escalate that differently.
Yeah.
So AI plays a really cool role in helping us understand basically, how to triage these things. We still need the human beings, we still need to trust, but we absolutely always have to verify.
Chaz, we just got about a minute left, so I want to, give you an opportunity to continue to add on that and see what you guys are doing differently within the Dataprise environment.
Well, I'll spin it into a conversation about my pet project. First, for all of us using AI proactively up here, right, as part of our tooling and solution, the mean kids are using it too.
Mm-hmm. That was what I was going to say.
Right.
Let's not forget about AI's impact on the hub.
You took too long on your first session. So the evil AI, evil ChatGPT, evil Copilot, right? They're all, I found like Austin Powers, evil ChatGPT. They're out there, and it's our job to kind of fight against them, right? But what is so important is the need to have a proper cybersecurity insurance plan within your organization. Mm-hmm. That is different than a business insurance plan. And I want to make sure that's very clear, because that often does not cover cybersecurity insurance. Mm-hmm. And if you bundle those two things together, I can guarantee you that your cybersecurity insurance is undervalued. Okay? So what I'm working with our customers on is trying to make sure that they have the right cybersecurity insurance in place. We're going through and auditing their insurance plan, finding out what it would cost if a particular event happened, right? Do you have MDM in place? Well, this breach came in through your mobile device. That's not covered if you don't have MDM deployed, right? So we've been filling out so many proactive insurance checklists, right? Like, yes, we have MDR, we have EDR, we have MFA enabled. We went and just found an insurance partner, right? So Dataprise has partnered with a group called Converge. They're a cybersecurity insurance. And what they've done is they've validated our cybersecurity solution to the extent where any customer of Dataprise's that has our cybersecurity solution in place, they're going to discount the premiums. I'm not allowed to say discount. You can't say discount. I didn't say that. They'll reduce premiums by 30%. In a large enough organization, that can fund your proactive cybersecurity program with any of us up here,
Yeah.
right? So having the right cybersecurity program in place is cybersecurity program, and then the insurance on the back end to support that is crucial.
I think we could spend another 30 minutes up here real easily. Obviously, guys, take advantage of the resources that are here during the trade show later. Ask some questions, do that sort of thing. But if we talk any longer, she's going to give me the hook, and then I'm going to have trouble. So appreciate everybody for taking the time.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you, everybody.